Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cardinal Careers podcast. Join the North Central Career Development staff as we discuss career-related topics. This podcast is really for you. We provide you with career-related topics. We answer your questions, and we invite employers and really cool guests, people that you should know. I'm Barbara Fouts, Assistant Director in Career Development, and I oversee internships. And joining me today is Heidi Nunez, who is the Director of Career Development, Margaret Stacy Duffy, another Assistant Director in Career Development who oversees employer relations, and our very special guest, Alice Dechene, who is an academic advisor here at North Central. So let's just sort of start with introductions, Alice. That dreaded "tell me about yourself" question.
Okay, so I'm Alice Dechene, and I'm the Senior Academic Advisor here at North Central. I've been here for 6 years. I advise students from across the college. Whatever your major is, I can advise it. Although I do initially, to start, the kinds of students who get assigned to me at the beginning are usually in the arts, or so like music, theater, the fine arts. They also tend to be secondary education and elementary education, music education, so any of the education majors. I have a lot of students in all of the majors in the College of Arts and Sciences for the most part, with the occasional engineer and the occasional business major as well. I don't know, what else do you need to know?
Well, I have to say that I have an unfair advantage because we have worked together for a long period of time. So I know that you have a really interesting academic background. Like, how did you end up as an advisor? And I'd love to hear that.
Okay, so I majored in a lot of different things when I was in my undergrad. So I was psychology, and I was literature, and I was French. And one of the things that I got as a temporary job or as a part-time job during my school days was to work in the College of Arts and Sciences office as an academic peer advisor. And all we did was hand out information about what the different majors are and kind of help people plot out things a little bit. I loved it. I thought it was the coolest job ever, but I was going to be a professor, so I didn't pursue it at that time. I went to graduate school for literature. I loved that. I taught English abroad in Belgium for a year. That was really fun. And then I got another master's from North Central, actually, in liberal studies, because it was very broad-based. I really like to learn, so it was a very broad focus for a master's degree. But my goal with that one was, because I was exposed to science and to humanities and to arts and to everything, was to then become an academic advisor. But when I was looking for jobs, most of the jobs said you have to have a master's in counseling. Oh, come on. So I went to Northern Illinois University and got a master's in counseling, but I really wanted to focus in career counseling. So that's how I ended up with you, Barb, by working with you as an intern doing career counseling. And my goal is always to put career and academic advising together, because I think you need both to understand your path. You can't ignore the academics, and you can't focus on academics and ignore the career. So that's my background.
I love it. And hearing that, and I would agree with you. You can't really separate career and academics. They are really closely related. And that's just really powerful for students to, hear from you. The other piece is for students to know is that because of your background, that you understand how the liberal arts actually help students develop skills, and that you understand the value of a liberal arts education.
Yes. So that actually is one of the questions that students ask when they're trying to choose a major, because they will walk into college with the mandate that this gets you a job when it's all over. And I understand that, because you need to be able to live when you graduate. You need to get to a job. But it is understanding that all of the courses that you are taking, the critical thinking skills, the writing skills, the communication skills, it doesn't matter what your major is, because you can take all of that information and view it as transferable skills that go into a workplace. And I have theater majors that go into sales, because what is sales but presenting something in a very vivid and dynamic way? So you are not defined by your major, and you don't have to try to find a job that is just encapsulated by what you study. You can go anywhere, and it's more how you make decisions, whether you want to have an end goal and you have 5 or 6 paths that get you there, or do you want to start here and know where you end up at the end of that with just the one path.
I love that. And what I also hear in that is a lot of hope and encouragement, but really trying to break down that myth that your career, that your major equals your career, that what you're describing is that the major is something that you can have a passion and interest about. You can, study literature, but in that it's also knowing the skills that you're gaining from your coursework and gaining skills outside of the classroom that's going to lead to lots of different opportunities. And that's also how we talk about it in career development, is recognizing that the major is one piece of who you are. I love how you say it doesn't define you. It opens the door for you.
Yes. Yes. And you really should love your major. You should love what you're studying. I think the best way to choose what your major is going to be is by sitting down and reading the catalog and looking at the major titles. Does that title sound interesting in and of itself? And if it does, select that title, read the course descriptions for all the classes that go into that major. You should be interested in, fascinated by, drawn to at least 80% of the courses that you have to take for that major. You have to do this work. So if you're not interested in it, you won't do well. It won't engage you. It won't hold you. So be passionate about what you're studying. That's what this is about. This is your time to explore.
That's actually really great advice, looking at the catalog and finding the classes. It's funny that you say that, because if we're going to do a little shift here and just share a little bit, I started out as a business major thinking that, I'm going to go into human resources. And I took a couple business courses, and then I thought, this doesn't, quite fit for me. I was doing well in the classes, but I didn't enjoy them. And then I did exactly what you recommended, Alice. I started to think, what else am I going to take next semester? And then I saw all these other accounting and other classes that, nothing against accounting, sorry people, but I was just noticing all these other classes that didn't hold my interest in the same way that some of maybe the psychology classes that I was taking. So that's really helpful advice, because the catalog is actually a lot of, it's a wealth of information, and it just gives you a roadmap, because if you can't see yourself taking those classes, it's going to be hard to get up every day and be engaged and bring your best self to your class. So
yes. And I started out actually as chemistry. And because I loved the puzzle solving of chemistry. Chemistry is solving puzzles, right? And balancing equations. But then I had the lab, and I am not a precise person. And so, I would drop a few crumbs here, and I would titrate till a beautiful, vivid purple color there. And it was not working out. But I'm still solving puzzles. So, I'm still kind of circling around the same ideas of things that have always attracted me. I could see you in HR. Because what are you doing? You're working with people on their career choices and internships right now.
That is true. That is true.
I wanted to chime in and share. First of all, I'm fascinated by this conversation already. I'm loving learning so much more about you, and I know Mac is going to be so upset that he missed it because this is his career aspiration. He has talked in prior podcasts about his changing majors and, discovering what he wants to do. But his aspiration is absolutely to be in advising. So he's going to kick himself when he hears this podcast later and realize that he could have been here. He sends his apologies. He sends his regrets. But I just wanted to chime in on that same theme, since you both shared that as a first generation student, when I went into college, I struggled to define what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what it looked like, what classes I should be taking, what major I should have. So I didn't have the words for it. So I thought, I think I want to do psychology. I knew I wanted to do some kind of intersection between business and psychology. And when I started taking psychology classes, I was like, this is not it. I don't like it. I'm not enjoying it. I know now that what I was interested was actually is actually economics.
Mm-hmm.
I know now that what I was interested in was just behavior and influence and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that then, and I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
influence enough around me to help guide me in those kinds of conversations. But much to what you're saying, Alice, is I ended up finding what I loved. I started the same thing. I went through the catalog and I started exploring what draws me, what speaks to me, what do I want to do. I ended up with a bachelor of arts in romance languages and Latin American studies. And I loved every single part of it. It drove me to not only just self-discovery and understanding, in particular, literature from the Mexican Revolution and Portuguese literature as well, but it actually drove me into doing research in my community as an undergrad. And it instilled I guess, sparked the understanding that I could have a career focused on my passion and driving change with populations that I care. Which is what I know it's right now, like my focus is around like education, higher education, access to opportunities and things like that. But it's just in that process that you're talking about, Alice, and discovering what you love and finding the skills to take that next step.
But it can be very hard to find what you love.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways people can do that, if you really don't know what it is that you want to do, you can start out by looking at the general education courses, because the gen ed is designed in part to help you explore and to help you find ways of thinking outside of your major. So if you don't have a major to start with, you can start with the gen eds. And the gen eds are designed around themes that are called icons. And icons just means interconnections. And it is ways for students to have a theme to the classes that they're taking in their gen ed program, so that if you're looking at sustaining our world, all of the classes that are in that particular icon have something to do with sustaining the world, or innovating the world, or being human, or examining health. So there's 8 different icons with different themes. And if the theme makes sense to you and it resonates with you, then maybe by looking at the courses in that icon, you can decide, look how many history courses are here, or how many media courses are here, or how many biochem courses are here. This is the major for me because I'm drawn to this particular theme. So when you don't know what you're doing or what you're looking for, you could look there to start.
I think that's really fascinating, and something that kind of reminds me of, or I think about that in relation to your career path, is how someone might have a lot of skills in I'm trying to think of a good example. I'll use HR because I was actually talking with a student earlier who is thinking about HR, but she has a passion for healthcare. And so we were talking about, well, you can do HR in a healthcare setting. And I think it's really cool to think about that. And Heidi, even what you were talking about, I think connects, but you might have a lot of skills and interest in doing X, but also have a really passion for serving a specific population or community or being a specific setting. And you can really find ways to combine those, which I think is really exciting.
Yes, I would agree with that.
One of my sort of favorite stories of working with a student was she loved music. She had a passion for music, but she also loved accounting and finance and economics. And she was thinking about how can I actually sort of combine these, because she was struggling with whether or not was music going to be the career. She had lots of those questions like, can I support myself, because she loved it, but she didn't see herself, you know, as sort of a working performer. And what she ended up doing was actually having an internship, an accounting internship in a music-related organization, and now is currently in that role for a really well-known organization. And so talk about combining the interests. So because your interests are important to really pay attention to, but it doesn't always mean that you have to actually have a career in that, because you have your interests, you have your values, and they're really pretty broad. So she knew that she really loved the accounting piece. It was a strength and a skill for her. But what kept her energized was be able to work in a music-related environment where every day she got to work with sort of amazing people. And I think that's Margaret, your story is wonderful, when the student recognized that you can do human resources in healthcare, or you can be an accountant that might, you know, sort of work for the Lyric Opera or something like that, you know? So.
It's very true.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in on both of those points, because I think that there are definitely conversations that I have with students about trying to make sense of where skills, interests, and values connect. And sometimes they feel like they don't. For example, a student who feels very passionately about pressing social issues, pressing social issue, but doesn't feel like they have the skill to work with people individually, to counsel them and get them out of a situation or something like that. And discovering that you can use your skills, or your abilities in other ways to still be in that passion area, right? You can impact that area through policy. You can impact that area through administration or other functions. As you just mentioned there, Barb, you can do accounting for an advocacy organization, right? You can do organizing. There are so many different ways for you to marry the different things like skills, interests, and values. It takes a lot of exploration and conversation and teasing it out, I think, because there is no one path. And I think that's where it's helpful to explore things like conversations with your advisor, exploring icons, taking a look at the catalog, meeting with career development, and just defining what is that next step.
And talking to faculty too.
Yes.
So you might not know that a major in religious studies could lead to an advocacy position or something, but maybe it makes perfect sense. And talking to your professors can really help you to figure out what other options are out there, what people they know are doing, what other religious studies or majors in the past have done, or whatever your particular program is. Yeah, it's understanding that there's just so many pathways that are open to you, but you just haven't seen them all yet. Yeah. So then I have a question for you guys. So how could a student get exposed to these different pathways? How do they find out what kinds of jobs, careers, agencies, whatever, organizations, how do they find out what's out there?
So I'll take that question. So there are a couple of ways that students can gain that kind of information. So let's say you're a student who you're sort of starting with, I'm not really sure what I'm interested in, or I need some help sort of clarifying some of my interests. So we have, introducing to North Central a really wonderful interest inventory called I Start Strong. So if students are interested in taking that, they can email career development, and it really helps students identify their interests that may be connected to industries. So it's connected to a great resource from the Department of Labor called ONET. We also have this great resource called, what can I do with a major in? And this is available on the career development website, where maybe you're psychology, sociology, philosophy, accounting. And it's a resource that is sort of set up that you can see the multiple pathways. So you're an accountant. Where are all the different places that you can work? What are the things that accountants do? It also has great resources to professional associations. So you can actually see what an accountant may do, or what does an occupational therapist do? Things along those lines. And then the other great resource we have is Handshake. And I know Heidi's going to pop in here because Heidi is the greatest fan of Handshake. But Handshake allows you also to explore careers and industries, and then connect with students in your major. So Heidi, you want to talk a little bit about Handshake?
Yeah, the two things that I wanted to mention there really quickly that I think is a new feature in Handshake that I think, Alice, you might like, is that there is now an opportunity for students to discover various roles, and that information is connected to the Department of Labor's ONET database. So students can definitely use Handshake for much more discovery, to seeing, I don't know what a financial analyst is. I don't know what consulting means. What is the difference between, athletic training and that kind of thing. Students can begin to explore that way. Students can also explore other students, and we find that peer support has been helpful to be able to see, okay, I declared a major in marketing, but now I don't know what I can do with that. What are some of the organizations I could potentially intern with? What are some of the titles I should be looking at? And they can definitely explore other student profiles and reach out to be able to get support in that way. So I really do like to think about Handshake as much more than just a job board, because you can connect in those ways. I also like to think for students, particularly early on, if you are exploring, even getting a little bit of a taste, whether that's through a part-time job or through volunteering, of any aspect of what you think you might be interested in. If you think that you want to teach, maybe do an after-school program and see how you work with the particular population that you're interested in. Or if you think that you want to, I'm struggling with another example here, but definitely thinking about either volunteering or getting a part-time job in something that's closely related to either the function or the setting, right? Do I want to work in a hospital? Do I want to work in a school? Do I want to work in out in the community, in the field? Do I want to have a desk job or work with people? So even getting a little bit of a taste of what that environment feels like for you, even if you're not doing exactly what you think you might be doing in the future, anything that you can get closer to kind of either narrowing down the decision. Because what we find from students is a lot of times, if you explore early on, you can get a good idea of what you don't like. And that helps in the decision-making process as well to narrow it down for you.
I'm so glad that you said that. Oh, go ahead, Alice.
Yes. No, I was just going to say that's so right. You have to rule things out just as much as ruling them in. And even by taking a class, I mean, I loved chemistry, but I hated the lab. So it ruled it out for me, but not the idea of the things that I liked about chemistry. So it is important to know, by trying a class, by going to a setting, by doing an information interview, is something going to be a fit, or is it potentially really not a fit for whatever reason? Because it's always good information, whatever you get.
Right. And sometimes, what I want to do is, I know that we've been sort of talking about this, but really being very explicit in letting students know that it's okay not to know. It's okay to explore. That sense, when we call students who are exploring undecided, that's a really negative, term. And you're exploring. It's really hard to know what you want to do at 18, 19. It really takes that exploration. But sometimes students feel so much pressure to make the decision, like, I don't know, I should know. College is expensive. Students are really very aware of that. But taking this time to sort of do what I call that guided exploration, where maybe you're working with an advisor or somebody in career development who can sort of help you see what are sort of some of those steps. Last night I heard this wonderful speaker in engineering that was talking about how engineers approach something, they call it plan, do, check, adjust. And that's what you do when you're exploring a major. You sort of make a plan. Maybe you're going to complete an information interview, or maybe you're going to get a part-time job, or maybe you're going to take some of the classes within an icon area. And then you're going to check, is this really right for me? Maybe I need to make a pivot. And that doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you found something about yourself and that you're going to move on to something else. But sitting with the ambiguity, sitting with the gray can be really hard, So I really wanted to bring that out because I often hear that from students, and I would imagine you hear that from students as well, Alice.
Yes. And sometimes, to me, there's kind of two versions of undecided. There's the starting out, really don't know what I want, taking classes for 1 or 2 years, absolutely lost, and then finally maybe focusing on a pathway. And then there are the students who get to junior or senior level. They're doing their upper level courses in their major, and they're realizing, I don't like where I think this is leading. I don't like the potential job at the end of it, but I'm really close to the end and I don't necessarily want to retool everything. So sometimes it's adjusting your expectations for what comes as your next step. If you are in your final semester of accounting and you really don't like an accounting internship that you had, or you don't like the idea of accounting per se, that doesn't mean you have to scrap everything and start over. It is still important to get the degree. That's not lost effort or energy. And then you take that and find a job or an internship as your next step. But it doesn't have to be a linear career path that this major leads to this job if you don't like what that job is looking like. There's a lot of student teachers that get into student teaching and finally, when they have full control of the classroom, realize this is not a fit for me. And okay, you know that now. That's great. You know it before you're out there 6 months into teaching a first grade class and it's not working, so you quit. It's still valuable background. You still have transferable skills that can go into a number of different directions. It's just knowing how to use those skills to reevaluate yourself from a different perspective and look from there. And that's where career development is so helpful.
Yes, we can. Yeah, thank you for the shameless plug there. I love because I'm sort of sitting here taking in everything that you're saying, Alice, and I'm hoping that students hear this as supportive and encouraging, that they're able to recognize that whatever their major is, that they have value, and that it's important for them to be able to recognize the skills, the strengths that they have gained from their major and their experiences outside of the classroom, and then maybe combining that with their passion and interest in maybe an industry, so that they can talk about themselves, where they are able to make that pivot, that they can get to their final semester and that there are options for them, that it isn't linear, that it is making the decision about your next step, then the next step, because it isn't just one career for the rest of your life. That what you're able to do is, as you begin to talk about your skills, as you talk about what you want to do, and that's really what we can exactly help students do. That it's like unpacking all of that and having a language to talk about yourself, so I'm glad that you brought that up.
And sometimes it's just giving someone permission
Mm-hmm.
to not have one single career and one
Mm-hmm.
job for the rest of their life. It really, sometimes it opens students' eyes when I say, you're not looking for your forever job right now. You're looking for, what do I want to do today? And it's like that for a major for me as well. What do I want to study right now? What am I passionate about? What interests me? Then I'm going to go there. And if I don't like it, I have permission to change. I can change. And it's true in majors, it's true in jobs, it's true everywhere. It's just, you have permission to change.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge that what you described there, Alice, about, coming up on your junior or senior year and realizing that this isn't it. Like, I think it's important to acknowledge how common it is. I think students, when they get into that position, feel like, oh man, what am I going to do now? Everyone else is set. They already know what they're doing. But I think, Alice, you're saying that you're experiencing this with students. I know Margaret, Barb, and I see this all the time with students, and it is so common. It's a normal part of the development process that we do have a name for it, as Barb talked about it. It's the pivot, right? How do you pivot at this point, right? At this point, how do you leverage the experiences that you've had in the classroom, the skills? I love that you talked about the transferable skills, but how do you leverage the skills that you were able to develop through all of your experiences? How do you capitalize on the experiences that you had to build on that, on what you did like, on the networks that you did make? And we absolutely see students develop very satisfying careers based on that reevaluation, the reassessment, because you do have to take another inventory as to, what did I not like? What do I like? What are the options for me? And we have seen students be very happy with the results afterwards if they take the time to really reassess that. And it's fair to say in all of these situations that you're right. You're not talking about your forever career. You're talking about your first step out of college. And it is also so common, right, that the 2 years later, right, that you're going to put in 2 years and then you either go to grad school, or you get a promotion, or you look for another company, a smaller company or bigger company, or a different industry. I think I want to try nonprofit and things like that. And that's normal too. We all have been in that place.
Right. And it's knowing, one, that there are places for you to come and talk about that, because that can be a lot to unpack, so it's good that students are hearing the message of that this is okay, this is normal, that that what they may be sort of struggling with or thinking about is normal, and that they can be successful after graduation, because there's likely going to be a pivot. So, if there's somebody who's listening to this podcast who's feeling that, we definitely invite you to come in and talk to us. The other thing too that I think has been really helpful for students who have gotten to that point and then have decided, maybe I don't want to do this, is the power of networking, to be able to talk to the vast sort of Cardinal network of people who are in an industry who could give you some of that advice. and to be encouraging and supportive and help you recognize, how do you apply your skills. So, yeah, you're not alone in this process. So I know that we're sort of coming up on our time, and I'm wondering if there's anything that we want to end with. What are your thoughts? We've talked about a lot of things.
I just want students to be happy with their major choice. I really want my students to love what they're doing. And okay, maybe there's a class here or there that they struggle with, don't like, whatever. But overall, I want them to feel that they fit and that their major fits them. And then figure out how they make decisions, whether it is by learning everything there is possible to know about what they could do in the future, or if it's really important to lock down on one path and stay on it, whatever your way is, and there's a multitude of other options there, but be yourself, be authentic to who you are. If you are feeling pressure to stay in a particular major, evaluate where that pressure is coming from and is it working for you? Because you are the one who does the work. You are the one who takes the classes. This is your life that you're building. It has to fit you. That's really all I have.
I think that's great. I wanted to I think my final thoughts here, if others are sharing, is that I think you said earlier, and I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth. I think you said earlier that you're more than your major, and I think that's another important piece, is that there's so much more to your college experience as well. Your volunteerism, your engagement, your campus experiences, your part-time jobs, your internships and things like that help develop your skills, that help you understand how you can incorporate what you're learning in the classroom, your passion, into what you can actually do. And my hope for students is that they see how important that is, as well as a part of that holistic development of what they want to do with the time that they've had at North Central, and what they want to do with that next step from there.
One of my key takeaways, there were many, but one thing that I think matched up with a life philosophy that I have, that I try to encourage students to have, is to celebrate failure. And I know it's not failure if you try something out and don't like it, but sometimes it can feel that way. So I just love that philosophy of, hey, try something out. And if it totally, you hate it, doesn't work, what great information. Awesome. So that's my key takeaway.
I love it. So this has been a wonderful conversation. Alice, thank you for joining us. We've learned a lot, and I hope all the Cardinal Network will enjoy this conversation as well.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.